What's up, guys? It's Uncle Freedom coming to you on a glorious and well-deserved day off, and as kind of an auxiliary video to the four-part series on how society breaks down, SHTF. If you haven't looked at those, I'll leave a link to one of them over here. They're a good time. Today we're going to talk about kind of an augmenting factor, right? Like this shows up in all four of the ways that it fails, but it's kind of an enhancement to how it fails. So that should be a good time for all involved. As always, like, subscribe, share, tell a friend. That's how we defeat the algorithm, yo, because they will absolutely shadow ban you for no other reason than you like to share guns and you think the Second Amendment should be celebrated. Also, if you were looking to support the channel, take a look down in the description box. You'll see something that says support the channel. Follow that link. It'll either go to a website or a Google Docs, and when you get there, any link that you see on there is one of my affiliates. Follow those links, do everything you were going to do anyway, and every little bit that you do, you get your cool gear, and it helps support the channel, and for that, I thank you. So, desperation, delusion, and laziness. It's the enhancement to everything that takes place in all four videos that we saw at the end. From food and water to the socialist ideal to law and punishment to mental illness. Desperation, delusions, and laziness are rampant in all of them, and they can make every situation worse just because they exist. So, number one on this list here is people are going to resist doing things that need to happen just because they believe if they are willing to wait a little longer, it will go back to normal. This is the most American trait on the planet. You always hear this, like after a major storm that comes through, hey, it'll go back to normal. We're resilient. We just got to wait a little bit and it'll fix itself. What happens when it no longer does that, right? That's a delusion. Being deluded into the fact that if you just wait a little longer, it'll go back to normal and the world as you knew it will go back to normal. It just doesn't work that way, man. That's a delusion, and that is toxic and spreads like wildfire, and it makes every situation in the first four videos so much worse. After that, we'd have to look at, this one is kind of toxic. This goes really heavily into the law and lawlessness video, and that is people place people into positions of power not because of their inherent knowledge or their ability to do things, but because they were in the army before, or he used to be a cop, or he was a paramedic. None of those things make me qualified to act as Grand Puma for my community. But we are really torn to do that. And the reason we want to do that is because in our brain, those things go hand in hand with qualification, and we allow them to do it. When in reality, that's probably not the best option. And the reason people do that is, one, it's a delusion. You're deluded into believing that this will happen. And this could take place in anything, your socialist ideal, because of somebody you placed into a position of power. Law and lawlessness, people that can become corrupt, because what does power do to people? Especially power with no checks and balances systems, right? It creates people that are dangerous. And self-deluding about how it's going to be, as well as the laziness of not wanting to find a better option, is how we get to some of these bad places. So that's going to happen. It's a weird enhancement to any of the problems we've already have. The next one that we'll probably see, and it serves as an enhancement, is you will have people with absolutely zero drive to do anything whatsoever that believe they deserve to be helped or provided for. This is our government's fault. Bar none, hands down, this is 100% the fault of the United States government right now. We created so many social programs that enhanced people's lives for doing nothing more than staying at home and having children. Hard fact. People don't like to hear that, and it's true. Like, it is, man. Growing up, man, like people had, why would you go to work if you went to work and you were gonna like lose food stamps for going to work, or EBT or whatever it is now? You were going to go to work, you were going to lose food stamps, and it was going to actually cost you more money. So why would you go to work when you could just have that? That created this weird sense of just laziness within the entire society of America, and you had people that just believed they were due and entitled to whatever was going to happen next because I'm an American, yo. It's not how it works, and it can make all of the other situations much worse. Desperate people make absolutely poor decisions, man, and they make those decisions much worse when they perceive any form of hopelessness. Now, this doesn't apply to all, but it does at some level, right? So if you are if you're in a situation where there's not enough food and you feel a little lost, right? And you become desperate. If you are desperate, but you still believe there is hope, you will make better decisions, even though you're desperate. But if you believe that there is no hope, right? Like it all hinges on this day, this time, this thing, and you're desperate already, you're going to make the worst decisions known to man. That is how in modern society we see people that rob banks, right? Some of these guys that do it, some of them do it for the thrill, but some that will do it is a case of they can't afford to do life as they're wanting. Maybe their kid's really sick and they're desperate to fix this out, and they view this situation as hopeless because they can't get ahead no matter what they do. And that leads to very poor decision making all the way across the board. Think you're immune from it? Wrong. You just haven't been faced with it yet. Laziness, man. So like laziness creates this weird faux inequality in society, and it happens right now. We can literally witness this all over America just by opening our eyes and not believing everything you hear on mainstream media. It creates an inequality, and there's a direct connection to that inequality between the workers that are actually producing and their morale, and them seeing somebody receive something with no contribution. We see this a lot now with our taxes, right? We go to work every day. We got to work super, super hard so that we can pay all that extra money in taxes so that they can provide that money out in government subsidy programs to subsidize and give them an inclination to not go to work and not do anything, right? We created that as a country. That's on us. Like as a country, we failed this miserably, but tell me I'm wrong. I'll wait. I'm not. I know I'm not, because everybody that works hard for their money feels this way at some point. Well, I'm certainly glad I worked all those extra hours and you ate like 90% of my overtime income in tax money that you're going to mishandle and spend on dumb crap that doesn't make sense. And then like you're going to give me a refund because I should have never given it to you anyway, but you're also going to like pay out to a bunch of government programs that subsidize people for being lazy. Sore spot. Something everybody needs to come to mind, this is a big delusion when we talk about this kind of a world, is that you cannot save everyone. It's impossible. And it is important for decisions that are made in this kind of a world to be made as a group. You may not agree with the decision that is made, but if you cast your vote and that vote got overruled because more people felt the other way than you, that's a decision that's made as a group. There's nobody at fault, nobody to blame because the group made that decision. But you need to understand it from the position that you can't save everyone, and that decisions need to be made as a group because it takes some of the pressure off of individuals making those choices. For example, let's say you have a retirement village or a retirement community in your home. Those people are constantly in need of more food coming in to subscribe to various dietary needs or what have you. Or your option is you've got a whole bunch of soldiers, if you will, for your area, and you need to provide those soldiers with more food. Throughout history, this has always happened. But you have to make a decision now as a city or a community. Do we provide the food to that retirement community and make our defense less effective? Or do we bolster our defense, making them more effective and effectively write off that retirement community? That's a terrible decision to make, right? But the delusion is believing from the get-go that we can save everybody if we just try hard enough. You can't. It's not how it works, man. It's unfortunate, but it's reality. It's going to suck either way you make that decision. But it's a delusion to believe that you can save everyone. So don't fall into that trap. Next up is decisions and the process of deciding things are absolutely terrifying in this world. And a lot of that is because people don't want to make decisions, right? We've created that, again, as a country, another big failing of our country. We have created this society that believes that other people can make the decisions for me. I'll go along with it, right? People don't like to make hard decisions. They would elect 9 times out of 10 to not make that difficult decision and have somebody else make the decision, because if it goes wrong, they didn't make that decision. That person did, right? We put him in power. He made this decision and it's a terrible decision and it went wrong. You essentially absolve yourself of any guilt of making that decision at all. And that's really dangerous. In fact, it's the reason that government as we know it can't actually function in this kind of a society. It has to be a true democracy with people having an equal voice, because if you don't have an equal voice, if your guy who you elected as mayor has more power in his vote than your farmer, you're doing it wrong. It's equal. It's 1 for 1, right? And we have to get involved in the decision-making process and just shun that whole, well, I don't want to make the decision because if I don't have any hand in making the decision, I can't be liable for the end result and I'll feel better about it myself. That's wrong. It's bad. And it can make every one of our situations we talked about, from food and water to crime and punishment, way worse. Because again, we start handing over power to people in an absolute vacuum where power doesn't exist. You might find yourself living under a real dictator. Could happen. So next up is desperation and delusions create people that turn on their community. So again, this goes back to those wild cards, right? Like you can, your actual like allegiance can be bought and sold, and the hungrier you get, the lower that cost is, right? If you feel disenfranchised from your entire group and you become desperate because you feel like nobody's listening to you and it's really, really bad, and then this guy over here, this warlord, when you went on a water supply run, offered you food and a shiny new pistol, and you were like, man, I couldn't even get a pistol in my community, and you go and they're like, well, look, man, I'll give you everything. I'll make you a king in that city, but just tell me how to get into there. Desperation for what you have and being deluded into believing that's actually going to help create that. They create those people that give up their community for a little bit of personal gain. And honestly, if you ask me, that's probably going to be one of the scariest things to see in our country when it goes, because we have so many self-entitled, like self-important, pompous people in this freaking country, that once we remove the gloves and they realize they are no different than me, I don't care that you used to be a Hollywood actor, bro. You're going to come out here and dig holes with me, right? Once we remove that and those people become delusioned and they become desperate, it's going to be scary to watch. Next up is delusions of fairness, right? This is a big deal. I've covered like the fairness complex as well as the socialist ideal when we talked about wild cards, but delusions of fairness is another thing altogether. And a lot of ways those feed into those things and they make them either faster or more violent when they happen. In the delusions of fairness, I'm not referring to kind of what you think I'm referring to. I'm referring to a protected class. If you think about like the Purge movies, right? So we look at the Purge movies, we had politicians with, government officials with a level higher than this were off limits for the Purge, right? That's a protected class. You look at the way our government works right now, right? Like the people can't even go into the Capitol building that we pay taxes. That's technically the people's freaking building. We can't go there, and people went to prison for showing up and sitting down in somebody's chair. That's a protected class. And the protected class is terrifying because it still creates an us versus them mentality. And in this world that we're talking about, there is no us versus them. There's either the people that figured out how to make the system work and get along with each other, or the dead people. Like there's really no other in between. Like here's the other thing we have to keep in mind when we talk about like career politicians. Because here's the thing, if this went wrong tomorrow, we would still have a fully staffed government thing in Washington, because they would rather reign in hell and complete dystopian nightmare fuel with zero people, them reigning over, just to say they have that power, than they would to come down to our level and do things with us. That's reality. You got to think about it another way too. We see this a lot of times, like this delusions of fairness, right? Like the politicians have a delusion of fairness that, well, they can have armed guards and people running around protecting everybody. Yeah, we're clear, guys. I'm not Glock 22 with a mod light. So they've got guys with guns protecting every move they make, but they're going to tell you how you can't have guns because you don't need guns because the government's going to take care of you. Okay, we'll give up your armed security. Oh no, I can't do that. I'm important. People would want to hurt me. You're no more likely to get freaking hurt than I am trying to go do something in the world we're discussing right now. That creates a delusion of fairness. They believe it's fair that they have armed guards because they're somehow more important than you, and that things would break if they were ever removed from where they are. Man, we screwed this up as a country. How did we ever let them like vote on raises? And how did we forget to term limit their ass? The protected class itself creates more desperate and delusional people than any other thing we're ever going to do. You want to create a society of desperation? Add in freaking politicians, man. Like, it's a sad reality, man, because I want it to work so bad. I do. I want it to work as our forefathers intended, and for all the bullshit regulations like the NFA and all that to be gone. I want it to all be gone, man. I want you to be able to go buy belt feds at the hardware store again, but we're never going to see it, because in order for that to happen, those self-important people have to make a decision to step back and relinquish power back to the people again. They create more desperation and delusion than anything we're ever going to do as a country combined. Like, it literally, and like I said, mark my words, if this happened, they would all be shuttled out of Washington to some underground protected bunker with enough food, water, and supplies to last them the next 5 years, while us mere peasants fight it out for the last remaining scraps that we've got in America. And they're going to wait us out and pray that when they come out of their cool little hole in the bottom of the ground, that they're going to be able, like I said, they'd rather reign in hell than be with us commoners. Sorry, man, this is a sore spot for me. And maybe I should have put that one higher up, but whatever. So a bonus point on this guy, kindness, but more the delusion of kindness, i.e. giving food away and not turning people away. I kind of covered this a little bit in the other one. From your community, it constantly puts your communities at risk. You're not being kind by giving away food to random strangers passing by your community. You're not, right? Remember what I said, facts don't care about your feelings, and you have to be a realist in this scenario. Giving away your supplies to people you don't know so that you feel better about what's going on is a delusion, and you shouldn't do it. And bonus point number 2, and I firmly believe this, the answer to the age-old question of how could another human do that to another person? Desperation is the answer to that. You want to know how people can do the things that they do that just make your skin crawl? Desperation. That's how it happens. Facts. Again, they don't care about your feelings. So guys, thanks for hanging out with me today. I am Uncle Freedom. This has been Desperation, Delusions, and Laziness, the enhancement modification to the 4 volumes of How Society Fails. I thank you again for hanging out with me today. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and until next time, I'll see you later.